Many Magic the Gathering playgroups ask the question, is it worth it to buy the Game Night 2019 edition? No, I'm sorry, this isn't an episode of Game Nights. I don't know what to tell you. I think you should have turned left at playing with power and then kept clicking on the Spike Feeder's suggested videos until you saw the Command Zone thumbnail. But while you're here, this video is a review of the new edition of the Game Night product. Game Night is actually a multiplayer melee of 5 pre-constructed 60-card decks, supposedly balanced against one another and featuring some exclusive cards. It's a Magic the Gathering board game. Pull it down off the shelf, grab a couple decks with friends, get some games, go about your lives. But what kind of gameplay experience are you getting, and is it something for the new or casual player? Does this pre-constructed, pre-packaged game night offer delight, or just a bunch of jank that is trite? The holidays are here, so before we let out a cheer, I thought I'd grab this off the shelf so we could examine it for ourselves. A Game Night box contains the following: 1 Game Night play guide and rulebook, 5 60-card decks, each containing 1 exclusive mythic not available anywhere else, 15 double-sided tokens, 5 spin-down dies, and some cardboard punch-out spin-down die placemats, as well as +1/+1 cardboard counters. Game Night does not come with any form of redemption code for Magic Arena, which I find odd because new and casual players especially could benefit from Arena, and a few digital packs thrown their way might incentivize them to log on, but no matter. What we are given is 300 cards for $39.99. There's also the same throw-ins from last year's edition, namely the spin-downs, the tokens, the life trackers, and like last year, the real value is only tied up in a few cards out of all 300. There's no reprints of note here, and this product is 295 reprinted cards, so that by itself says something. Aside from those 5 exclusive mythics, there's almost 0 cards of note. Running through the deck lists is like rummaging through the free Draft Chaff box at your local games store. But despite the 295 reprints, this isn't really a reprint product. It's a Magic the Gathering board game, and I feel the emphasis of my ultimate evaluation and grade should be on how well it functions as a game that you can take out of the box and just play. That will be the crux of this review, how well this plays. But it is fair to do at least a cursory look at financial value, as well as some interesting aspects to those 5 mythics. When I see a product like this, I can't help but think of some of the old and discontinued Magic the Gathering pre-con products of the past, namely the Dual Decks series. Those two were play right out of the box products, meant to be the sort of thing you grabbed to play against a friend when neither of you had a standard deck. New and casual and returning players usually turned to Dual Decks as a go-to purchase, and existing players enjoyed them for the flashy premium face cards and the scattering of reprints contained within. They had their hits and misses. For every Izzet versus Golgari, there was a Speed versus Cunning, but on the whole, I think it was a worthy product line, and it's one I miss, especially when I see things like Game Night, which is the cost of essentially picking up 2 different Dual Decks, which for those of you counting at home is 4 Dual Decks, but you get the idea. Game Night has these 5 foil mythics, original creations found only here, but there's literally nothing else. Really, all of the commons and uncommons are in the 1 to 10 cent range, many of the rares are too, and what's more, the cards are only from the last few years of Magic. Dual Decks not only came with a foil mythic per deck, but they were made up of reprints from throughout Magic's history, oftentimes having a small selection of cards played in formats like Modern or Commander. When all your chaff is standard chaff, you end up with cards without a lot of homes, and in this case, without a lot of value. The 5 exclusives are where most of the value is tied up in, if not all. That is because these might actually be neat in Commander decks, which is a fine strategy, I suppose, though I might advocate instead of original cards at these values to reprint cards that are already at these values, but nonetheless nonetheless, the biggest draw outside of straight up gameplay in a game night box are these 5 cards right here. I especially think Fiendish Duo is powerful in Commander. Cheat it out early, protect it, and wowee, that's fun. Each deck also contains 4 rares for a total of 20 rares. The added 5 exclusive mythics, as well as those 275 additional commons and uncommons and basic lands. As I stated, it's just 275 commons and uncommons from current standard, plus a few of the previous blocks. So there's very little to get excited about here. Last year, the Game Night box had 14 cards valued at $1 or more, but this year there's only 8. And 5 of those 8 are the 5 exclusive mythics, meaning that those aside, there's only 3 cards out of these 300 that are valued at or above $1. Voracious Hydra is indeed a nice inclusion, as is Galta, and hey, I don't mind an Agent of Treachery, but I do really want to emphasize that there's not much in here. And yet, thanks to the exclusive cards, if we add up the total value of just these 8 cards in this $39.99 product, you're getting $45.53. Plus, of course, the remaining 292 bulk cards, which it's still a big old pile of cards. So honestly, I know one of my biggest advocacies is reprints, but I want to say that I'm okay with products like this on one condition. I am okay with 300 bulk Magic cards for $40 so long as there has been thought and care put into the design and testing of the decks that are built from the bulk. As long as I, as a player, am getting a fun and interactive experience, then yeah, I'm okay with this. I support products like battle decks from Card Kingdom because although there's absolutely no cards of value in those decks, they've been constructed with that expertise and are actually a great deal of fun to play. That's my condition. If a company wants to say, hey, this isn't a product made with reprints in mind, then fine, but that means the weight of that product's value lies in the gameplay. The gameplay better be a blast. And in my evaluation, the gameplay here is extremely poor. Decks are monocolored, so there's 5 with 1 of each color, and this by itself creates what is usually going to be a very linear style of gameplay and options. There's things red is and is not going to be able to do, especially when confined to standard-only cards. There's things green is and is not going to be able to do, and this is exasperated greatly by the fact that there is almost entirely just 1 to 2 copies of each card, and almost never 3 to 4. You're not really seeing playsets or even 3 times copies of cards in these decks. This creates slow, inconsistent games, which all have a tendency to get bogged down in dirtling gameplay. In my testing, I encountered constant stalled game states where literally no one had any ability to break through. Most rounds are players just wheeling back and forth, hoping to draw some kind of answer, whereas other games are decks getting stalled out while one player luckily draws into their hard-to-answer bomb. In other words, games with these decks are sluggish, balanced to the point of being stalled, if that makes sense, with very few options and even fewer interesting interactions, and no clear strategy in each deck other than to turn over the top card of your library and see if you can cast it. I'm going to be completely honest here. I saw no real difference in what I was experiencing when playing Game Night from what I used to experience when I would sit down with these basic 30-card sample decks back in the day. This is essentially the same thing in terms of gameplay. Yeah, there's some rares in here. There's that one mythic bomb. But basically, you're dealing with a bunch of commons and uncommons, 1 to 2 of copies, and then you've got those couple of rares that you hopefully draw at the right time. Gameplay is so boring with this. And maybe that's me commenting on my own personal tastes in terms of play style. I will acknowledge that different people can enjoy the game differently. But for me, My evaluation, these decks are dull to play with. Even more dull if you are not in the multiplayer melee setting. So I'm not going to go on about a lack of value reprints here, nor a lack of a pathway to standard, as this product attempts neither. But if you're going to mostly put together decks from bulk, as the majority of these cards are just commons and uncommons with little to no value, then why limit yourself to just standard cards? And yeah, a few cards that were recently in standard. There are 10-cent cards from throughout Magic's history, and old does not always mean too complex, though the dull, dirtling nature of these decks really could use a little added oomph in terms of complexity and synergy. Imagine 5 decks, one themed for a different Ravnica guild. Izzet versus Golgari was the best duel deck ever made, so why not make a multiplayer version of an Orzhov duel deck versus Rakdos versus Azurius versus Selesnya versus Simic for this melee brawl? Why are we limiting ourselves to cheap standard commons? And if it is just cheap standard stock, why not construct really engaging decks and use 3 to 4 copies of cards instead of just 1 to 2? This year has already brought us the A-quality guild kits, and that was what this should have been. Now, guild kits were $20 each, but they at least were cards from throughout Ravnica's history, creating a fun and engaging gameplay while also offering cards of needed reprints. They were the real deal. 5 would cost $100 instead of $40, so I understand why that is not accessible for some. Still, when I see some stores have offers as low as $86 for a set of 5, I can't help but feel this is just a much better experience, better value, better all-around product. Final conclusion, Game Night is a basic battle box made up of 5 decks that consist mostly of old standard common and uncommon chaff. There are a couple noteworthy rares, but the overwhelming majority of cards are bulk, with little to no value or use. The biggest perk are the 5 exclusive mythics that are included, and while these 5 cards are not standard legal, they could find a home in Commander decks, and they're certainly fun bombs to drop during a game if you're lucky enough to draw the 1 copy that's in your 60-card deck. But gameplay with these decks is, in my evaluation, slow and very grindy. I found it very unenjoyable in testing. It's a dull Magic the Gathering experience, largely due to a limited range of commons and uncommons that are almost entirely 1 to 2 of inclusions. For $39.99, you're still getting 300 cards, and it would still cost far in excess of that $39.99 to purchase all of them individually. And as I demonstrated in the financial section, yes, there are 8 cards included within, 5 of them the exclusive mythics that you could sell off for more than $39.99, so I suppose this is satisfactory as an introductory experience to multiplayer for brand new players, still wetting their feet, but I just can't see casual or returning or experienced Magic players wanting this. I'll go ahead and give it a grade of a lackluster C, and I'm going to emphasize the lackluster nature. Satisfactory, I guess, but disappointing nonetheless. You know, casual Magic doesn't mean dull Magic. Casual Magic doesn't mean weak or simplified Magic. Casual Magic doesn't mean bad Magic. And in the case of Game Night, casual Magic shouldn't mean dull Magic. This is a product, more so than others, that is teaching me we need to re-examine what we mean when we think of casual Magic the Gathering gameplay. But that, of course, is just my opinion, and now I want to hear from you. What do you think makes for good casual gameplay? What's some of the best casual products you've ever experienced, not in terms of reprints, not in terms of financial value, but just in terms of the most fun you've had sitting down to play with things right out of the box? What were the factors that led to that fun? That's what I want to figure out, and that's what I'd like you to let me know in those comments below. And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.